The extreme ends, the tallest people are the extreme ends of the panel.
I didn't know you were tall.
You can be part of the show. Join us on our YouTube channel. Drop your comment there. We'll be getting to it in a bit. But also we're streaming live on X, on that space there. The number for text or WhatsApp, 0709 60 25 92. Let's get into this conversation. The Deputy Speaker and the Speaker, the Right Honourable Jacob Oboth, both including his deputy there, the Right Honourable Thomas Taibwa, were both elected on Monday. We also looked at the cabinet that came in yesterday evening. A lot of retention, but also new faces, and some of the old new faces are there. And that seems to have constituted government that calls itself no sleep, no corruption. Will they be able to deliver? Let me get to the panel that is with me this evening. Honourable Paul Muiru, please allow me to start with you there. You vied for the speakership, attained 60 votes. Was the process free and fair?
Well, the process was free and fair, unlike the presidential elections we have just had. Because for it, the votes were cast, there were agents, they tallied, they announced the result. To the extent that even when the president was dissatisfied with the results, he lodged a petition complaining about a vote, an invalid vote, where one of the members of parliament, actually three of the members of parliament would say, Thomas Taibwa, both Thomas Taibwa. In his view, he thought that the intent of those MPs was actually clear. That since the election was about to both, and they put two names that they were not, maybe they were not sure of who was in the race for whatever reason, that was circumstantial enough for us to pick and say they mean both in this case. So as far as I'm concerned, the elections were free and fair. There were 519 members who participated.
Yes.
The winner, Honourable Both, got 441 votes. I was the runner-up. I got 60 votes. My colleague, Honourable Norbert Mao, got 15, and 3 were invalid for the reasons I've given. So it was a clear process, save what we need to look at in the future. I'm not disputing the results. Of course, members kept on complaining the atmosphere in Ikololo.
What was the atmosphere?
Whereas they were free, so they were fair, but they were not free because of the controlled environment. They kept on telling them, you know, there are cameras seeing you, the way you are voting. I think it's high time next time we go back to the chambers of parliament. So that people are comfortable. They go to the booth, mark their votes, so one cannot know whom they have actually marked. Then this will even also take us to the ballot papers, the way they are. But you see, if they are serialized, and the one who knows that Aaron Kasuja is A, Professor is B, I'm C, I'm D, and E. Of course, what happens to those which were used? For instance, you saw the president in a subtle way was like, because I got more votes than what we have in the National Unity Platform, and he was claiming to be being in bed with other political parties, and he was complaining, where did these extra votes come from, which actually I got. You saw him grudging about it, to the extent that if there is a process where one gets back to the votes and analyze. I'll give an example. We have been having this local government election for speakership. You know, they would go and register, meaning the handwriting would be clear. Then they go and vote. So after voting, they leave those ballot papers where they write the names with the clerk. And in one of the division, a mayor was telling him, you know, these members always didn't vote for us. I told him, you prove. So he had to bring me the list where people signed, and then they were showing, and actually it was evident that that was their signature. You understand? Because the members are voting a speaker. A speaker, in the real sense, is supposed to be bipartisan. Me and my colleagues who had all made that commitment. So there was no difference between me, Honorable Mao, and Honorable both who emerged the winner. Our work was to allay the fears of members, that when we become members of, when the speaker, maybe there are repercussions of not voting for me or not doing any other thing. Because like you would also meet other people to say that you see we have no problem, we would have voted for you, but we don't want to be in the parliament for 5 years when we are fighting with the speaker. You understand? So that's why I say that I'm not contesting, I was contented. But when you look at the bigger picture, there are things we need to correct. I may not be necessarily myself in the parliament maybe by that time, but we need to correct an atmosphere that whoever participates, the election, you see, it is one thing to be fair and not free.
And just sticking with you before I move on, the Right Honourable Jacobo Botho made 7 pledges there. Fighting corruption, upholding fact-based debate, timely oversight, the executive holding it accountable, an open parliament with ethical media values there, a speaker for all, and absolute integrity. Is this possible?
Well, of course, when he listened in, because when I declared my candidature was anchored on 4 pillars. And why I was happy that when we articulated the national opposition alternative vision for parliament, and it's going to be anchored on 4 pillars, he got all the 4 pillars, he embedded them in the 7. One would even be right to say that he had 3, he added on the 4, and he made a commitment. That's why, for me, and maybe you can say the team 60, we gave him the benefit of doubt. We are behind him, the team, because we have something to hold them accountable on, the commitment actually as well. First, you all agreed with me that we need a reset of parliament. And once he made that commitment, even after the election, because it would have been a different matter for him that as we were talking, for him to talk about doing the same. But you see, he waited and said, okay, look, I've listened to our issues, without even consulting us, because we had no patent over them. He picks them, and then he was very clear.
Thank you. Professor Sarah Sali, let me come to you. When you and I have sat here before, we have spoken about Parliament, there was an exhibition, there's a lot that has been talked about. The 11th Parliament. Why should Ugandans give the 12th Parliament the benefit of doubt?
Thank you very much, Timothy, and once more good evening, our viewers. First and foremost, the Parliament constitutes people who were voted in by the people. So that alone illustrates the different aspirations of the different Ugandans. I think it's not for us to sit and judge them. One, it is to accept that given our time and the stage we are at as a country, those are the people, the Ugandans, we run a parliamentary system where people elect those they think are best suited to represent them. So our assumption is that all those who are there were found suitable as the best people to represent the people they are coming from. I think now the duty is for the Speaker and those who lead Parliament to convene and bring this, harness and harmonize all these interests for the national good. And I think that is possible, given the leadership the Parliament has received, but also knowing that the Parliament does not exist alone. There are other arms of government, like the judiciary, and then you also have the executive. But as for the parliamentarians, I have said this here before, many of them campaigned on issues of social service delivery. Many of them amplified the issues that are pressing them in their area. For example, I've always been here and I've always given the example of Honorable Bruce Balabakabasa, who is an MP of Rwanda West, just like all the other people who I witnessed in Rwanda West. It's not just, it wasn't the usual just politics of vote for me because I am going to do this and the other, but it is being able to connect with the interests on the ground. What are the issues in the community? Poverty, youth unemployment, school dropout. And for me, I think these are more valid issues for an august house like a parliament resolve, because those are the issues which affect us on a daily as a people. So I have a lot of hope in the Parliament. And but it will really be, of course there are many, it will be really for the leadership of the parliament to draw out those resources. So we are looking forward to how the committees are going to be constituted and how they are going to do their business. But we have interacted with parliament before. It has been very useful in streamlining us in government MDAs. I believe it has a very strong role to play. They do an oversight role when they go making visitations there. I believe the current parliament is more able to do that. They have very many younger people with lots of energy and in touch with the ground, like the example I've given. Thank you very much.
And I'm glad you've given that. The image of Parliament, when you hear the speech from the Right Honourable Jacob Oboth,
yes,
it's speaking to that. It
yes,
is speaking to the media.
Yes.
When you hear the Right Honourable Thomas Taiwa, he's
yes,
also speaking to that. Today, bits and pieces have come out about committees, house travel and all these things. Is this possible to restore an image of an institution like that?
Well, I don't think the image was really that bad. Of course, there was the right. First and foremost, we have to ask ourselves, was anything done out of the law? Okay? When Parliament sits and sets certain things, we trust that they are doing them within the law. Okay? So we outside can question, and indeed, like what has come out, they could have been excessive, but the issue is, at the time they did them, was there a law backing what they did? So I believe that the current parliament is going to look at the resources they have, is going to look at the needs of the country, and they are going to find out a way of meeting those needs. What I don't want us to sit and think is to say that should not have been done and that should not. It takes a cost to do certain things. Of course, when you're talking about some of the, maybe people have hyped the issue of the per diems, probably that's big. But other than that, if they are going to traverse this country, get in touch with what is happening, play their oversight role, legislate, it's going to cost money. So whereas there's hullabaloo about the per diems for foreign travel, we should also remember that even here, it's going to cost them to do that movement. And when that happens, we should not then jump up and scream and say this parliament is just like the previous one. Let us give them the benefit of doubt. Let us look at what they are going to do, and then let us assess them for value for money for what they have done.
You mentioned resources, and that caught me.
Yes.
Because the 11th Parliament is the one that appropriated this budget. The 12th Parliament is going to superintend this budget.
Yes.
How are they going to manage resources they didn't even budget for?
The good thing is the parliament has a number of people who were from the old, a number were returned, a number are new. Even some have come from the past, like I know our honourable here was there previously and left and is coming back. So you have several generations of people who have served in parliament. They are the new ones, but they are the new ones like him who were there before, but there's also been continuity. But also parliament works hand in hand with other arms of government, as I've expressed before. So there are other arms also that supervise parliament. You have Auditor General, you have IGG, you have all those things. So I don't think they're just going to go on a spending spree and do whatever. It's true the budget was appropriated. Like all of us, by the way, when we run a government MDAs, when we run budgets which were set by the previous. But you have a duty to work, and there are several mechanisms of controlling that. You have Attorney General, you have, I think now we have the issue of NPA is very strong on us on ensuring that we are harmonized with NDP4. There are so many organs in government that, and Ministry of Finance itself, because the resources have to be found. The resources don't just exist. When a budget is appropriated, it's not that the money is seated there. It is appropriated, yes, but it has to be found before it is spent. And it's found from the daily collections of tax and many other things that government does. So as this is being done and this is being prioritized, you will see that there will be a mechanism of that. That's why you can be given this amount of money in a budget, and sometimes that money doesn't come because another priority has come up. Because it takes time to raise the money, and we all have to work. For example, the economy today had a problem. That budget may never be realized, okay? But as it's being realized, I hope it will be debated and expended properly through the different government MDAs that are charged with doing government work, the executive, and also ensuring that there's value for money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan, a precedent has been set. Since the 6th Parliament, this is the first time we have a speaker who hasn't bounced back for a second term. But also, with that precedent being set, one of the things that is there is that Jacob Oboth has made pronouncements. The Deputy Speaker, Thomas Taiwo, has also made pronouncements. At what point can they walk the talk of corruption, getting rid of it? Is this possible with the two gentlemen at the helm of the legislature?
From the onset, let me be clear that I love you parliamentarians. I have no problem with you. I'm going to work with you. We are going to be good friends.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, Parliament as it is right now is suffering a huge credibility deficit. It needs to establish itself and to reestablish its credibility as an institution that is actually serving Ugandans, and not one that is made up of careerists and people who are seeking rent and seeking personal, you know, just people trying to serve themselves. Are they there to really serve Ugandans, or are they there for a job? These are the questions that they need to tussle with. And to be honest with you, the last Parliament was extremely messy. The way things ended was not good. And unless we confront these things, and I'm listening to Professor here talking, and I'm like, I think I'm going to get into trouble today, because I'm not that careful with the things that I say. And I also have to recognize the fact that I'm a government spokesman. Parliament has a huge credibility deficit. People think, and I do share the view, that it is big, it is amorphous, it is unclear ideologically, we don't know what it does. I wonder if some MPs, there are MPs, I'm sure, who don't know what their job is. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, there is need for introspection. That if you are a human being, and Parliament was a human being, it needs to think about where it is at the moment and where it wants to go. My politics is such that I'm a movementist. I honestly don't believe in multi-party politics. I understand that is the dispensation we have in Uganda at the moment, and it is what we have to work with. But right now, how about we move away from politicking? And Paul here can sit down with someone from the other side, from another constituency, and they craft a plan that will get people out of poverty, that will work on development issues. How about we focus on that? Because the telenovela that was the last Parliament was absolutely exhausting. You know, we watched things, and I personally can tell you that there were moments when I sat back and I thought to myself, where are we going as a country? Primarily because of the things that were going on in Parliament. When is Miss Honorable Oboth and Honorable Thomas Taiwo, are they going to walk the walk? I think lessons have been learned. I personally like the choice of Honorable Oboth as Speaker. He brings a certain calmness, a lack of excitement. He seems like a balanced, measured guy. Thomas Taiwo has experience, so I think that balance will work well. But right now we are watching to see results. And you know, I might get into trouble for saying these things, because I have to go back as the head of the media center, which is completely under-resourced. I might go back and ask for money. But the fact of the matter is, we need Parliament to stand up and actually grow up and take its position in this country and do the job that it's meant to do. And I hope that now is the time for them to do that. And I trust that the leadership of Oboth and Thomas Taiwo will bring in the necessary equilibrium or balance that will hopefully deliver results.
And you know, you mentioned credibility, and you have been in this space of communication for a while. How would primarily Parliament be able to turn that image? What would be the 1, 2, 3 things that the two gentlemen at the helm will have to do to turn the ship to look the right side?
You know, we adopted the Westminster style of government, where you have the parliamentarians, they go in and they create this unit, and they're supposed to legislate and do these other things. And we must recognize that Uganda as a country is younger than the King of England. So we are still going through the process of getting to find out what democracy is, what that looks like, and what the end product is going to be. We are going through that process. You know, we copy the Labour Party, we copy the Conservatives, but we don't understand the history or the emergence of these political parties, and as a result, there is a level of copy-paste that might not necessarily work. And that is an argument that I think President Museveni has made as well. I think one of the things that... What was your question again?
The question was simple. You spoke about credibility.
Yes.
What are
so what are the things that it needs to do well? It needs to show us that they are not thieves. They need to demonstrate that they are not in there to plunder government resources. Because unfortunately, I don't know how else to put this. I don't know how to speak politely about these things. Unfortunately, we need to trust these people. We need to trust our parliamentarians to be the people who speak on our behalf. Professor was talking about representatives, and I was scratching my head and saying, oh my goodness, that is a great thing to say, but what is the reality of it? We have job seekers and self-seekers in parliament, and that has been an unfortunate thing. But right now there is an opportunity for a reset, and that reset will be, for example, institutionalizing systems. You know, where systems take root and they can actually, we can see where money goes, there is some level of accountability, and it's not just things happening willy-nilly that they were before. This sort of mob gangster approach to the management of government business, hopefully, is not going to be seen again. Hopefully things are going to get better. Hopefully we can trust the decisions of our parliament. And I think this is going to take a lot of introspection on behalf of those people who are given this responsibility of acting on our behalf. We need to trust them, and we're going to watch them very closely. Every single politician, whether opposition or government, has a job to reestablish, to help reestablish and defend the credibility of Parliament as an institution. Because right now, that credibility is in ICU.
Wow. Julia, let me come to you. Credibility is in the ICU. When you look at the process that happened on Monday, the Honorable Mwiro was there, the Right Honorable Jacobo both, the Deputy and the Speaker were elected. What did you make of it?
Good evening once again to the viewers. I do not want to repeat so much that was said by Honorable Paul here about the process and everything, but I want to focus more on the result and the commitments that were made. Of course, the ruling party having majority in Parliament, it was not a question of whether their endorsements would come through. Really, precedence has had it. They have the numbers, so I think that process was just confirming the choice that they had made prior.
You sound like it was a selection, not an election.
Well, the party has its own internal processes. I think only that, I think what made this election a bit different from the rest is all these matters started online on X. And I think by the time they had the election, it was just a confirmation. But before that, you've always had, the SEC, seats, VET, the interested parties. But so the party has its own processes, and I don't want to base most of my conversation around the NRM parties or internal democracy processes, but mostly looking forward, because the party can also do its own introspection and choose to have better policies of deciding leadership moving forward. But from the commitments, on behalf of Ugandans, I think we like where Alan left off, the credibility is in ICU. We are trying to hold them by the book, the commitments they've made. And for me, honestly, looking forward, Professor said we have a couple of young people that have come into Parliament, really energetic. We have those that have returned. I just want to say, hopefully, this is a clean slate for Parliament to start afresh. I remember when they were having the election, by the time the the CJ announced that 350 MPs were in attendance, I think some joined in later, but when he made that remark on X or online, media already started asking, we need to know the MPs who have not showed up for the first sitting. Which brings me, I think, for me to the starting point. I think it's clear enough that there's been a lot of saturation of media into the political events of Parliament, even the public itself, social activists, Parliament monitoring organizations, even as citizens. I think, like Alan said, we are watching. So there's been a lot of commitments that have been made, and we can only hope that the MPs and the leadership really serve the interests of the people. But for me, it's simple. We have to start again with the numbers. I think from the previous Parliament, it was quite disturbing for a person who offered themselves. They went through the notorious campaign process. You're elected, and then you fail to show up for the sittings. So I saw the clerk warning them that I think when you miss 15 sittings without the right procedures, you lose your seat. But we hope this is really brought to the book. I think for the legislature, you do not really need to be forced to do your job. And I think this time we should not have the House empty, making deliberations on behalf of the people. And again, I want to emphasize substance. Yeah, when you look at the previous parliament, it was a matter of the rate at which they were rushing the bills just to tick them off the box. So if we can have more effort into research, yeah, so that by the time these people are coming on the floor to deliberate, I mean, I can say that's my member of parliament because of whatever they are bringing up. I think that can over time also build the trust, that evidence kind of debate on the floor of parliament. And also we've had enough of the political theatrics and polarization. I think it's high time, like Alan said, opposition and government understand that they can agree to disagree. For me, I believe in the politics of the unlikely alliances. At the end of the day, there is that cause, whether you're NUP, you're DP, or NRM, there is that cause that should bring you on the same table to agree to disagree. And then I also want to emphasize, because the ruling party has numbers, oftentimes when they bring bills to the floor of parliament, oftentimes those bills are going to pass. So it's no longer a question of passing or not, but the substance behind the bills. Can we have then more effort concentrated on the quality of whatever is makes up the bill that should be passed? And then beyond that, of course, they've also had a commitment on oversight. The biggest problem in this country is implementation. Yeah, so we really hope to see members of parliament doing their job beyond sitting on committees, actually going to field. Because, you know, reports oftentimes deviate from what is actually happening behind the scenes. But beyond those roles we know for our legislature, we also need to acknowledge that we are in a country where Ugandans or us citizens still hold honorable members. We still think we can only trust them if they serve the constituency, what we call constituency service. Less about, you can be a very good legislator, you debate, you do all that you're supposed to do, the oversight, but if you're absent in community, I mean, Ugandans will still say that is what the MP does. So they need to also balance, because we have a very big section of MPs who stay in Kampala and they only go back to their constituency almost during time for re-election. I think it's also time that they balance the boat, because whatever they get from their constituency is really important. So as they're trying to really play their role, I think it's very possible for them to regain the trust, but because that is the only way they can really legitimize whatever they are doing. As citizens, I think we are watching, we shall keep watching, and matter of fact, because of media and the salience around parliament and everything, I think it will be very hard for them not to do their job. In fact, if they don't, you will see it online that, again, we are disappointed, the term has ended, we are still in ICU.
And you mentioned, you know, the commitments that were made by the Right Honourable Jacob Oboth. The Right Honourable Jacob Olanya, that Pastor, God rest his soul in peace, talked about a people-centered parliament, yeah, talked about a data-driven parliament when people come with facts there. But with 3 minutes of speaking on the floor of parliament, with limited time to be able to do research and come and be able to give a proper report there, 3 days the amendment of the UPDF Act, 14 days sovereignty bill. Is it possible for them to get the time that the Right Honourable is talking about to have a fact-based debate?
It is very possible. I mean, anyway, that's just me. I mean, we are having people that operating. Oftentimes you see the person who is deliberating, I mean, you don't get to deliberate on everything. I think you get to know that maybe I'll concentrate here, make more research. 3 minutes is, well, for me, it's good time to make your point home with your evidence, or if you cannot submit everything through speech, you can already submit your detailed report. I do not know how the follow-up looks like on the floor of parliament, but beyond that, I mean, we've seen people in different jobs and all of that operating in more, I want to say more, the word has disappeared, but in more kind of fast pace, the way things are moving way fast. The parliament is made up of over 500 MPs, really. So you cannot tell me that all the 500 would deliberate on the same issue. usually there are bills or there are issues that best suit, maybe they attach more to your constituency or not. So there is that kind of maybe what could be choosing what to focus more. You see what happens during budget reading. There's a time Honorable, I've forgotten his name, he's out of parliament. He was talking about the fact that very few MPs actually even read the budget. Yes, Semuju. He was talking about the fact that you'd be shocked that members, MPs don't read the budget, and yet they're supposed to scrutinize the budget. And then you will say, oh, where is the time? But again, this is what you signed up for. You can always make the time. Is it the night? But at the end of the day, I mean, usually even in any workplace, it's not a matter of did we give you enough time. It's a question of have you delivered. You will not explain to a Ugandan that you see, this is what we are operating under. These are the circumstances. At the end of the day, like Alan said, what Ugandans need to see are results. You've made commitments. What does it look like? Yeah, have you delivered on them? Yeah, and then definitely also Parliament can look through and see how to make the processes a bit better in terms of deliberations, in terms of research, because I think they also have a budget towards research on committees, and they have people who are not members of Parliament that support in such units. Yeah, so I think they can really make it work, but at the end of the day, they have to figure out how to make it work to deliver for the betterment of the country.
And I also think the debates do not necessarily have to happen in Parliament.
No, yeah, they happen in the committee.
They could, and even beyond that, take the debates out. Get them debating. I think the way the world works now is if 3 minutes are not enough, you know, these things have been democratized. Go to the media, set up a TikTok account, discuss these things there, generate debate across the country. I think things are a little different now. And then, you know, I think if you are trying to engage, I think we need to think a little bit more creatively.
That's true.
And I think part of that creative thinking should involve significantly reducing the size of Parliament to numbers that are manageable. And because it has served, the big numbers have served their purpose. And now might be a time for us to think about reducing it to a much more efficient machine than this thing we have, this construct that does not necessarily deliver, depending on who you speak to.
But I hope you're still speaking for government.
Yes, what I'm trying to say is, whereas that has been good, it has been fronted at every time with the electoral reforms. Each time we are going to an election, the issue of the size of Parliament should get smaller, comes up.
Yes.
Instead, it becomes bigger. So my assumption is probably this is how the government has found it best to balance the interests of all the different interest groups in this country.
But it's also okay for it to review whether or not Parliament is working.
I'm saying, I agree with you, but I'm saying that the mere fact that this issue has been raised, we are not the first people to say it. It has been raised for at least the last 3 elections, like around 20 years in the past. But it is not shifting. That should show you that there's a reason why it's not shifting. Probably government has worked out that this is the way it's going to balance interests of the different categories of people here. So then the issues you're raising of being creative on how people submit then has to be considered in the case that we have failed to reduce the size of Parliament. And now, that also what you're suggesting is a possibility as long as the media stops ranking parliamentarians according to the number of times they have spoken in Parliament. We all know that a lot of work occurs in committees, but we know that all the time the media is always ranking.
And it tells people, that might be because people don't know how Parliament works, and there is a need to educate people on how Parliament functions, and they don't understand why Parliament exists in many cases.
Yeah, that is true. But what I'm saying is that at the end of every parliamentary session, we are given ratings of who spoke most, who spoke least, and this informs how people vote on the ground. So as long as it's going to be an issue of shaping and shifting who returns, it's going to be very important that people speak, and then you have the 500 plus. And then there's no time. Then it's the 3 minutes. Let's do the 1 minute here.
And before I come to Honorable Paul Miru, Alan, you mentioned something about you know, taking it out there, being more creative. I remember that Honorable Joel Senyon, you put out a report. I don't know if you put it out, but it leaked, the Uganda Airlines report, and that was something that was contentious. How do you avoid having such contentious issues on the floor of Parliament, a report that is not yet deliberated on, coming out to the public?
For as long as you have human beings, you know, I'm sure people have held meetings where they've signed non-disclosure agreements, but information still ended up in public. And does it serve a political purpose for you to leak this sort of information? I think for as long as you're dealing with human beings, it's always possible.
And it doesn't have to be the classified reports.
No.
What he's saying, we can do a public forum where we discuss what's the state of education in this country.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is the state of agriculture? Do we need a PDM like this or like that?
And I think debate should not be the preserve of parliament.
Yes.
I think debate on issues, by the time these guys have 3 minutes in parliament, these honorable members, it will be the last mile. Let the debates happen outside parliament and in fora.
On topical issues. We
should encourage these debates.
Okay. Allow me come to Honorable Muiru. Honorable, the National Unity Platform, which you subscribe to, there has been always that contestation between the National Unity Platform and the NRM. How does that look like in the 12th Parliament, between your 48, 49 members, and come when something contentious comes on the floor?
I think since I was the only MP here, though I'm not the spokesperson of Parliament, I think you should grant me the latitude also to make my colleagues understand, maybe because you see narratives are thrown around, and I want to say from there are 3 arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. But the way, for instance, what we are talking about, and if you go to the functions of Parliament, one of them is to make laws. The other thing we do is the appropriation, that all resources as they are collected the concerted fund, because the law says any money collected within government goes to the concerted fund, and it only lives with a vote of Parliament. And maybe for the benefit of my brother Alan, is that the budget process actually starts with the first call circular. It is issued by the ministry to accounting officers, and they say, please, go and get a wish list. And when it is issued, the town clerks, they normally invite you, I don't know where you stay, at your villages, there are always notices to invite you to come and participate and make the debate. Some people go there. I don't know how many of you go there. You debate. When you debate, they compile all those things you wish to do into the ministerial policy statements. Then the Minister of Finance issues what you call the second call circular, advising them on the resource envelope, and say, this is the resource envelope. You must have a budget within that. It is now at that point that the minister submits to us and say, these are the funded priorities, these are the unfunded priorities. I mean, the debate will have taken place at your parishes when they are collecting views. What they bring now to Parliament is looking at how to scrutinize and then see how, given the resource envelope, what should be appropriated to where. Which powers also now, I think the executive has taken away from Parliament these days. Because they say Parliament's work is to rubber stamp, which was actually not the case before. Why I'm saying that the way the country is governed, it has a Vision 2040. The Vision 2040 of the country, it is where the ministries and government agencies get the strategic investment plan and they come and customize them to the ministry, pull out what is relevant. So the budget comes out of that and is brought to actually Parliament. Why I thought this should be understood? Because like from the way we say that, you see, why you person of NRM, why don't you sit somewhere with the government, then you discuss something. Everything is agreed on. We have actually agreed on where we want to be as a country. Where we have not agreed is that the talk and the appropriation is not the same. Because if you say you want to make Uganda a middle income state country, and the appropriation it doesn't go to the flagship projects you have raised, we shall go back to the flagship project. So when you spoke to us, you told us you're supposed to be a middle income, you're not middle income status.
You know, Paul, you sound very balanced.
And then you say, oh, fine, can we say what have you appropriated in that direction? Those are the files which people have been saying that, you see, those are the issues where we have been now. But again, now I'm talking now at Parliament holistically, but then when it comes now to MPs, you know, the role of a member of Parliament has no tangible performance indicators. The way we do hold the government to account and say, you said these are, you want us to go this direction. These are the performance indicators. These are not seen. The drawbacks of members of Parliament, as she was somehow saying, I also was about to fall for that, is that they've actually, they know they are, but also those who have sticks to doing their work as MPs, when it has come to election, they have lost. Simply because the masses, majority of them, are not interested in the work of an MP. Yeah. You understand? Yeah. They're interested in being with them, staying with them, but that's not the role as to why you're actually elected. That's why I hear Alan, when Alan says, look, does this democracy still work for us? Because we have always said the issue of numbers. Like the last amendment, we were saying, look, we need to reduce the size of Parliament. We should have one woman MP, one male MP per district. So that we increase the number of technical people to help us improve the quality of work. In as long as we don't look at human resources and what we do. I'll give an example, like opposition. We deal with oversight. We have those accountability committees. They give you one clerk, you have 112 entities, which you, like their votes, you realize that the central, whether the votes under that, where the clerk is involved, there are those many. As other than having the sessions, you keep on having sessions, the clerk must write a report. He sits in the committee today, he must write a report. He has to all through the 3 days. The point I get is that we need a review to say, first, do we need the way it is? It was even raised yesterday when it was coming to the number, because instead of the leadership now trying to advise the executive on the direction, because if you have elected 528 people, members, and then you are saying, because Professor Ephraim Kamuntu raised it, I said, I've been looking at the 4 hours we sit. If everybody must speak for 3 hours,
3 minutes.
3 minutes, only 80 people will speak per day. And you have no guarantee that those who speak today will not speak tomorrow. Yeah. Because there are issues which come up, whether they want best to speak about them. Because they know you stop a government chief whip or a minister on the other side to speak about a matter, or the head of opposition or the opposition chief whip, because they are leading the teams. You are all the front bench. So at the end of the day, in my view, it is high time we started the discussion. Do we need 2 chambers? Do we introduce members of Parliament? In as long as we are looking at creating a constituency as a political achievement, because you see, they may vote for your government not because they have worked on the road, because they do it in a short way. But people say they have given us a constituency, they have given us a district, they keep on saying they are bringing service closer to the people. But we also need a study to see whether that is true, that has worked in terms of how it works. So for me, if we are to, yes, I don't know what my brother meant. We are not inheriting the badge of dishonor as the 12th Parliament. So it will not be, it will be very unfair for you to say that because of the 11th Parliament acted that way, therefore the image of the 12th Parliament is dented. Yes, the parent did the sour grape.
I think Alan was talking
get the sour taste, because there's no way.
I think Alan was talking about it as an institution, not as the 12th Parliament, as an institution.
I think
that's where he was asking about.
Yeah, because you see, everything.
The Church of Uganda gets a new archbishop, it doesn't change the fact that the Church of Uganda is an institution.
You see, everything starts, and you see, if an organization to grow, it's about leadership. To fail is about the same.
But you can't disregard what happened in the last Parliament, Paul. You have to be clear and say mistakes.
What happened?
No, but even Honorable Thomas Taiwa said that mistakes were made in the last Parliament, and those mistakes, lessons have been learned from those mistakes. Yes. And I think that is the progressive thing to do. It is delusional to suggest that because we are 12th Parliament, we must disregard the 11th Parliament and ignore the mistakes of the 11th.
No. We're not saying we do. You see, for you are saying that the Parliament is dented, you understand, like beyond repair. in your view?
I was careful
And
not to say beyond
me,
repair because I work in government
yes,
these days.
Fine. and for me, I'm saying the 12th Parliament has a fresh page to start on.
But
That's
don't,
why,
but you see, don't
why,
waste the opportunity that comes with that. Don't waste the opportunity that comes with the fresh page. Reflect and think about the mistakes of the previous parliament, and then see how to best move this thing forward in a manner that reestablishes the credibility of parliament.
Actually, what my brother Alan is raising is what was the campaign for speakership. You understand? If you analyze what all the candidates were saying, including myself, was saying that, look, the law has no issue. The law as is, if you operate as per the law, you get it right. If you try to bend the law and do things, you end up wherever they have ended. And that's why, for instance, Honorable both of us were talking about a reset. You understand? And for me, I was saying, look, mine is on these pillars, the four. They're going to form the foundation of my leadership, meaning that we are alive to what actually happened. And the other issue, for instance, where I may agree with him, the framers of the Constitution were very wise when they say that the Parliament shall determine their emolument. Because they knew that this is an institution which checks the executive. They do not want influence over Parliament by the executive. That clause was abused. It went into abeyance. That's why I tell every moment, every now and then, you see people going to beg. You understand? That's what the speaker was talking about. That we cannot live like paupers. Because the members tend to carry on the baggage of their constituents and want to carry it on their head, keep on moving around looking for money. That's what the problem. But when it comes to the functions of Parliament, this is what I want us to do, an audit. That's why actually I decided that if I had become Speaker, I would have a policy of quarterly publicizing what we have done vis-a-vis the resources we had. So that there's an open policy thing with Parliament. Some people even understand what we do, because if we don't do that, I know many people don't even know what a Parliament does. Just like an MP, people will judge you on whether you have given them something or you have not given.
And I think the opportunities, for example, and I hate to dominate this conversation, but for example, there's a CDF thing in Kenya, the Constituency Development Fund, where MPs are given a certain amount of money, and that money goes directly into development issues, and it takes away the need for you to dig into your pockets and to get into debt trying to appease your constituents. But then there are also things like PDM that exist, things like Emyoga. So even if you do not agree necessarily with the government's politics, you can actually jump onto these opportunities and make them work.
Actually, where I agree with you, we don't even need to jump on what other people are doing. Like if CDF was reintroduced and it focused on projects, because like in Zambia, this is what actually, they create a CDF in an office of an MOP, but it doesn't even touch actually the money. They create a staff, technical staff, in his constituency, that when issues come which fall within the line of an MOP, they even handle and solve issues. So an MP is freed from...
So now that we have PDM, we have Emyoga, we have all these opportunities, the question becomes, how do I, as Paul Mwiru, make sure that PDM is protected and is even works to my advantage and to the advantage of my people?
You see,
and I think this is where this politicking really gets to me, to be honest with you.
No, actually, you miss a point. There's nothing actually people do without politics. You even realize that you may be where you are because of politics.
I don't know.
Whatever, yes, whatever you're talking about, for instance, everything from the past is politics. You understand? But then, yes, like as I was saying, if PDM was allowed to run freely, without like attaching so many dynamic structure in a village to determine who are the beneficiaries, because it will collapse. Because even projects we do, even us as MPs ourselves, we try in as much as possible to let them run without us. Why? Like I had a circle in my constituency. When we try to let it stand on its own, we first run it properly when we were away. But when other people should go and by them, whoever got money thought he had been rewarded for having supported me. You understand? But also that doesn't mean that there are no good people. So and actually, like what the president said now, there are things which the president talks. In other countries, where the president says it's a directive and it becomes law. But in Africa, where people do what you are saying, the politicking, we have to pick and say, how do we craft something which fits into what we want to do? But because in the case we don't, because that parliament you see, if people don't, even the way you said, if even MP don't know what they're supposed to do, but they're responsible for getting out the money out of the consent fund. I'll give an example of the loans. When Parliament normally pass, you realize that there may be no scrutiny. People just say, I want to add, when people see that it's electricity, so we just lobby that I want you to support electricity in my area. That's not the issue. I have no problem with electricity in your area. What I'm saying, I'm scrutinizing a loan. Is it the best loan for the country? In terms of interest, in terms of, it does have a grace period. Those are things we are supposed to be looking at. Because other countries have rejected loans which are very expensive, which have no grace period, and have looked for them somewhere else. Like if I rejected the loan today, it doesn't mean that I'm against the project. I'm only saying, go and look for cheaper loans.
Okay, thank you. Professor, you had a quick comment before I ask the question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm here listening and I'm getting shocked. I think politics informs each and everything we do. It's the way people get into collectives, decide, make decisions, define their interests, articulate them, lobby and advocate for them. And Parliament is the highest platform where that occurs. So I think we shouldn't sit here and lie to ourselves that Parliament is not going to be less political. It's a very political space. People who have gotten there by politics. They have articulated particular political agendas. There people have voted them.
I'm really arguing against the politics. I'm talking about the theatrics of the politics.
No, maybe the theatrics, that one I don't understand. But the politics is going to be there.
Yeah, inevitable.
And
obviously.
it is very inevitable. That's what people are.
Yes.
Now, it's one thing to front these different projects we are doing, and they're a very good thing. And that is how actually politics should be. But until our people are at a certain level of development, they will not stop assessing their representatives by how many times they attended burials, by how many times they paid school fees, by how many times. And you see, PDM is not supposed to be doing those kinds of things. It's supposed to be doing development. So we are going to continue seeing parliamentarians going into the pits to dig the graves, attending burials, attending weddings, because to the people, that's what representation is about. We have sent you there to harvest, come back and share with us. So you can debate as well as people want to debate. And to be sincere, people actually love the debate. But as long as this primary core function for which they sent you for is
digging the grave.
Digging the graves, attending the wedding. Because if you've been on the campaign trails, those are what people are asking for. So even when we sit here and we say, Parliament has betrayed our trust, who are we in that trust? We actually in Kampala want to see a certain level of political discourse. The people on the ground are totally wanting their needs served, and the only facet of the state they see is their MP. Short of their MP, it is a policeman when a crime has been committed. So it is the MP they see as the artifact of the state or as the representative of the state, and they're going to put all their demands there. So for the urban areas, the representation is different. The demands on MPs are lighter. For rural areas, which is the biggest section of this country, the demand on MPs. So the MP will actually defend the PDM, will defend the Myoga, will defend, but will continue receiving phone calls. My child has fallen out of school. How do you help me pay? My child who I've gotten out of marriage is sick, and I don't want my wife to know. Can you please send me? So you deal with all these kinds of things.
So an undertaker.
You become an undertaker. To an extent that MPs are forced to, by the not picking a phone call of a constituent is also a crime. So some who are very powerful, even set, apart other than doing the constituency offices, they have had to come up with the times when the constituency can call. So you tell the constituency, I will be taking calls from 8 to maybe 9 p.m. or midnight. Because even a drunkard on the village calling you and you don't pick as an MP is a very big crime. So I think we need, as he said earlier, let us have the debate, and these matters can be debated. What is the role of an MP? Okay. Let the community debate it. But also beyond that, when these matters come up in Yoga, PDM, they should have a wider discourse in the community than simply implementation. And And we should all work hard to ensure that our people get out of poverty, because if they don't, the MOPs will continue bearing the brunt of
That is the most important thing an
Yes.
MP can do,
Yes.
to help people get into the money economy so that they don't have to come with begging baskets and ask you to put them in that position where they are financially
Lastly,
dependent.
Alan, one of the things that the Right Honourable Jacob Oboth was stressing was the relationship between the executive and the legislature. There's been a murky, blurry relationship there. The handshake seems to have gone to the elbow. How does he manage that the two institutions have the separation of powers, but also have a linkage to deliver to the people?
I don't know which world that would exist in, where there is a complete separation of powers.
It doesn't exist.
As initially, was it Montesquieu or Rousseau who suggested Montesquieu? As Montesquieu suggested it at the very
Doesn't
beginning.
exist.
You know, a French philosopher comes up with this idea that separate the powers, but the reality, you see, realpolitik is different. The reality of things on the ground, as
The
we say.
context and times
Exactly.
matter. So we're not
It's-
living in Montesquieu's time.
Exactly. We are in a time where Parliament, you know, the government needs to get things done, and it needs Parliament to get those things done, and Parliament is made up of is led by a former minister in the government, and these cohabitations will continue to exist, and this relationship will continue to exist. And again, I think in our context, it's a lot better if there is harmony between the executive and Parliament. I think this idea that Parliament will, I don't know any member of Parliament, any Speaker of Parliament, and I defer to the Honourable Mwiru here, who has succeeded by attempting to be completely independent of government. I think that relationship, it's the way things work, the realpolitik that we see in Uganda demands that relationship functions. And I think it demands that, because the alternative, what is the alternative? Can Parliament actually take on the state and, I mean, the government, the executive, and be successful at it? I don't think so. I think let's not idealize these things. We exist in Uganda where the reality is Parliament is thankfully led by someone who can get along with the government, and they can, again, find a manner, find a way of dancing without stepping on each other's toes.
Very well. Yes.
I think that is not correct. The argument has been that it is the duty, the framers of, like, for instance, of our constitution, made it clear that when Alan pays the tax, it goes to the consolidated fund. That since it is the executive proposing how to spend, the legislature must look at what Alan wants to spend on, look at the national development plan, you understand? Look at the availability, look at the other competing needs, and say, put this money here, put this money in this direction. What apparently is happening, what has actually in effect has happened, is that the executive has almost taken away the appropriation function. That they come with their budget and say, don't touch, pass it the way it is, don't distort. And we are saying that is not proper. Because, for instance, if you look at like classified, in the 9th Parliament, classified was 180 billion. It went to 300 billion, and the justification was the war in the north. From 9th to now 12th to 11th Parliament, it is in 4 trillion. There is no war, but it's a safe passage for siphoning money now. This is what we are saying. And I tell you, please don't look there. First, classified does not allow. If you look at the budget corruption now, is the biggest killer. Even the corruption you talk about, it will never be fought. Because the money which you would have put in the different sectors of fighting corruption, now the money is being siphoned through budget corruption. This is what we are saying. And it is my contention that the appropriation function is a function of Parliament. You understand? This is what I think what the Speaker was saying, that you cannot say that our work is to rubber stamp. Because even when we rubber stamp now, and we go to oversight, they're going to tell us that one leave. Don't touch Kasuja. Don't touch so and so. Don't touch the other. So at the end of the day, is Parliament relevant then? Unless you're talking about a merger. Because to me, in as far as if the law says money must leave the past by appropriation of Parliament.
Okay.
And for you're saying it's not necessary.
I think that's a strong moral point, but I don't know what the reality of things is.
Okay, gentlemen and ladies, please allow us. Let's take a quick break. When we come back from this break, we'll be discussing the appointees of the ministries there. This and more after this break.
So, Muchara.
Yes, Daddy.
You know the children are going back to school and things are a bit tight. Huh? For now, why don't you take half of the fees to junior school, and for the school van contribution, we shall pay later. Huh?
Daddy, why don't we pay using MTN Momo, where we stand a chance of winning school fees for a whole year and more? By the way, you can also apply for a school fees loan, and also participating schools can win a school van.
That's right! Win school fees for a whole year and more. Get Momo goodies and a school van for participating schools. You can also apply for a school fees loan. Simply dial *165 *80# or use the Momo app.
Guidance on the physical attendance of the State of the Nation Address on the 4th of June 2026. Following a statement from the Ministry of Health on the outbreak of Ebola and guidance on the standard operating procedures to be followed, Parliament of Uganda has adopted the following precautionary measures regarding physical attendance of the sitting at which His Excellency the President will present the State of the Nation Address on the 4th of June 2026 at the Kololo Ceremonial Grounds. Only members of the 12th Parliament and select officials of Parliament will attend the function. All guests earlier invited are advised not to attend physically, as Parliament has made arrangements for virtual attendance of the proceedings. All Parliament social media platforms and the national broadcaster will air the State of the Nation Address live for the general public.
The government's mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project that answers somebody's question.
The front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice and commerce.
Why do you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers? You bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card, because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport. If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda. A new dawn on Behind the Headlines with me, Timothy Nyangweso. Every Wednesday, live in our studios in the heart of Kampala. We have conversations that have analysis, explanation, but not every truth is fact, and not every fact is truth. Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
Come back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. I'm joined by Julia Muhumza. I'm joined by Honorable Paul Muiru, Professor Sarah Sali, and the ED himself, Alan Kasuja. Let me read some messages that have come through. These are on our YouTube channel. This is something that we need to know about. Is Parliament able to stop burying and attending weddings? Okay, that is Lydia there. Then Silva says, asking yourself, does Parliament benefit the public trust? would be the effect of them working to the benefit of the Ugandans. Can the executive get its hands out of Parliament's work? Okay, very interesting. Lennox sends a message and says, the politics in Parliament, unlikely alliances, we're just waiting for a new theatrics in the 12th Parliament. Let's believe in what is happening there. Okay, I also see one that comes in from Mugisha Cohen. He says, it's good to be watching the show from where I'm watching it from, but the 12th Parliament is really starting on a very bad stain. I hope they can be able to clean up themselves and do it for the good.
Which one?
Okay. Ochan Rogers from Kitugum says, I am tuned in and watching. When I listen to Jacob Oboth, I am really wondering, the person that helped in the facilitation of removing the age limit is now at the helm of Parliament. What else are we expecting? Okay. Emma Christine says, there is nothing new that is going to happen with this Parliament, neither with the Cabinet, regardless of whether you say new old faces or faces that are new. You don't hope for anything, okay? Wow.
Yeah, let me answer the other question. Yes, in Kenya, they passed they call it the Arambe Act. It criminalizes MPs in participation in funerals, in weddings, in what, because they had realized they had distorted the politics. That people who come to contest for office will not come and say what the role of an MP is and what they are going to be. The people are perceived to be that if you marry a big number of people, you're a good MP. So in Kenya, there is the Arambe Act. You can Google and find it.
Okay.
It criminalizes all those things. Digging the grave, as the professor was saying. it's a crime.
You can be on our YouTube channel. Drop your comments. We'll get to them at the top of the hour there. But also, the Honorable Dr. Crispus Chionga could not make it today. But we also congratulate him on his appointment as designated second deputy prime minister there. Julie, let me come to you. The ministers have been appointed as of last night, and the message came in the wee hours. I saw breaking news here. When you look at the designate ministerial appointments, what do you make of them?
One, I want to thank the president of this country for appointing a young person as a minister in charge of youth. I think we've made a lot of noise about it. But also beyond her being young, she has really grown through the structures of leadership from Makerere. So we really think this is someone who is part of us, who will really not only understand our needs, but also play a very important role in driving the direction of policy, or policy for the young people. Congratulations to all those that made it. I don't know if it's too early for me to say congratulations because they're yet to be vetted. But one, I want to say there are those that the public already has confidence in because of their track record. An example of Ambassador Adonia Ayebare. Like, we just know, hats off, he's definitely going to do a very, very good job because his technical expertise and his previous position has really proven that he can do the job well. So as a public, definitely for such people that were appointed and they are already technically competent and public already trusts, they will try and do something different and do it better. But beyond that, I think it is also important for us to know that there have been conversations around, is it competence, is it loyalty? I mean, in any political, in any democracy or with these political appointments, it's always not competence alone. There are very many factors. Competence could be strategic positioning, could be party dynamics, and also regional balancing in Uganda. I think you've seen the debates of how many people came from this region and all of that. So it's interesting. But beyond all those dynamics, I think the vetting committee will do its job. I just want to say there are areas that I think Ugandans have highlighted and put on questions as far as competence over time. But for me, I think in Uganda, we are not yet there, but we shall. But I think for me, I would be worried if the teams under the minister and not actually do not have the technical expertise, because most of the technical work is done by the PS, the departments, and all of that. If the ministry is really drawn in a way that all those below the minister know what they do, it's always easier to even when it's important for the minister to be competent. I think Uganda usually likes to draw an example of the Minister of ICT of Rwanda with her qualifications and how, because you see we are living in an interconnected world. There are certain ministries, over your Minister of ICT in Uganda, like you're still like connected to the rest of the world. The conversations around ICT in Uganda or health or science, technology, innovations, they cut across. You're going to find yourself in, international forums. You have to play a huge role in strategic lobbying, maybe investments, international partnerships that can benefit the country. So I think that is usually when us as a public are interested in the competence or the technical expertise question. Beyond all of that, I think we've had a couple of more young people appointed. I think we always say for us as young people, it's the first to eat, but getting so much away from that to the substance behind the person. You can be 40 or 50, but you are too passionate about the agenda you're fronting for the young people. Of course, there are a couple of those that have returned, and there are major debates on, I think, I don't know if it's just me, but I don't see how most of these ministers actually account to the public. That maybe there are those that have definitely come back, but for the years they've held the positions, we don't even know in terms of maybe policy and all what they have done and all of that, which is also a key way of building confidence in the government building confidence from the ministerial point of view. But lastly, I think it's around implementation. Uganda has the best policies on paper. We've been talking about the NDP4. I mean, if you read the manifesto of the president, you'd be like, wow, I want to live in this country. But in terms of implementation, things are very different. So I think for me, moving forward, the credibility, the outcomes is what we are interested in, but I think those that will actually perform are those that will play a huge role in terms of follow-up implementation. I think you've seen the debates around local government, Honorable Balam and Honorable Namere. They look like people that are really hands-on, and I think most of these ministerial positions really need people that will go down to the grassroots and follow up and hold to account and see that the policy or the programs of the government are really followed up. So to conclude, I just want to say it's mixed feelings. Like Honorable Polly has said that we should not hold the 12th Parliament to the account of what the 11th Parliament did. Oftentimes I'm choosing to close my eyes and say, okay, even if you've just come back or you've been reappointed, this is a clean slate for you to work twice as harder or to do more to make sure that by the end of the term there is actually something tangible we've achieved from here.
Thank you. Honorable Mwiru, when you look at this cabinet, there are some that have bounced back. The Vice President is back, the Prime Minister is back. A few changes in the deputies there, but also some designations changing, a new Minister for Gender, Labour and Social Development there. When you look at all these who are coming in, what do you make of this cabinet? What was the President's thinking, in your view?
Of course, to start with, just like Parliament, we have had issues with the size of Parliament. If you compare, the size of Cabinet, if you compare other countries in terms of population and what we have, it is already too huge for us to maintain. The other, I think to me it is, if you look at their budget, because one time I look at the budget, one minister had the budget of 300 million. Meaning that because you see, the ministers are political heads of these ministries, and their work is supervisory to go to the field and then also to chair top management to see that once the budget comes in, because it goes back to the budget, that once the releases are done in the ministry, as the political head of the ministry, you're supposed to see the release you have, you call your people and see how do you fulfill what you're supposed to do. In some ministries, there have been even, some even get zero release. if they're not interested in you. I've seen, I think, my brother here, Alan, will tell us, those of the vice president, the time when they were considering it, I think things are not essential. They only give them, sure, they pay salaries, and people move around. But going back to the people whom they have appointed, it all depends on the appointing authority. Because all of them come with their own merit. Some are children of veterans, some are, they are rewarding, some are doing what. But as to the work itself, of course for me I have no doubt that if someone is well-intentioned as appointed a minister, you are doing the supervisory role. The technical team, it will depend on how do you relate with the technical team in that direction. And in some instances, there's a substantive minister and there are ministers of state. Before, it was only the ministers, substantive ministers who would attend cabinet. But that had also caused the problem. I think it was changed that they all attend the cabinet. And it is going to be really incumbent upon the person who has been appointed, whether wanting to learn from the technical people, because like when someone is appointed a minister, they are supposed to have induction on how government runs. We have seen ministers who bring a law, then they go and look for a police. You understand? So one wonders, what is the problem? What did they understand? Why is government operating like that? You saw what had befallen us during the sovereignty bill, to the extent that we are seeing government entity, department and agencies opposing each other in a committee room. We just were seeing darkness at noon. Because the procedure would have been that people would have consulted within the government before they come to face each other in a committee room. But by and large, you still, as I said, of the 12th Parliament, you cannot judge someone who has not assumed office. Of course, I don't know whether they did due diligence on them, because the other lot, the other bunch, immediately they were elected, they started stealing Mabati. So it was very funny. So one would wonder how that happened, how the Kasujas had vetted those. Immediately they became ministers. They were over. Stealing Mabati, stealing where they have ended up an embarrassment. Because some were convicted, some returned the Mabati, some. So they were helping themselves. They were acting like two strangers who have stepped into someone's elevator. They don't know where to start from. So we don't know whether there's a background check. Then also the characters. There are some whom by conduct, I think they pose a big test to the appointments committee. You understand? Like, for instance, when I met my brother here, Alan, you would see a measured civil servant. You understand? Because he knew he's a government spokesperson. But he's also has come, and he sees alive to that he must reconcile that. But we have been seeing the conduct of this people, the way they have been operating around, then somebody appointed a minister. So I think they are creating a very huge task to the appointments committee.
But when you look at some, especially some that you are vying with for speakership, deputy speakership, because the Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, the Honorable Lieutenant General Tumkunde, all of them seem to have bounced back. The Honorable Norbert Mao seems to have bounced back. What is the intent? Is this just reward, or there is an intent that we're not reading?
Of course, the president was clear when it came to UPC and the DP. In a subtle way, he was saying these are collaborators. We are working together. So, you know, when he was complaining about his vote, and this manifests itself in the cabinet. So that would also now create, like someone was cracking a joke in the morning, that you are saying you people go to all the opposition votes. Are you sure they're all opposition? Because now some of the guys have been appointed ministers. Did they vote for you? What exactly happened? You understand? It's a clear reward for what people have been doing. You understand? Then the other is Forcost Mukunde is part of the family. That one, you know. So no reserve Soswas doesn't seem to wanting to disturb. The others are historicals, they fought. So it is their thing.
Interesting.
It is their thing, really.
Let me come to Professor Sarah. The cabinet that has been appointed, some back, some retained, others very new, others like representing the youth there. Is this the team to deliver no sleep, no corruption? And how feasible is it for them to deliver?
Thank you very much. I believe actually they will deliver no corruption, team no sleep. As we said earlier, just like we observed on the parliament, the cabinet actually also has younger people who are very dynamic and who are very serious with what they are doing. For starters, the ministers are only 30, and then the cabinet, the ministers of state are 51, and these I think come up to align and support the main ministers, and so those are like 30 dockets. So, and when you look, like Julia has just said, there are many younger people there who I think actually will do a good job, and because I've ever served with them in Makerere. Honorable Fiona Nyamutoro, Lilian Abel, and now Marcela Kisa. These have all been in university politics. They've served on the university council, so they know what politicking is about. And they're also MPs, so they also have a connection to make in their constituencies and there. So I think when we look at the arms of government, that one is lawmaking and another one is executive, and you have some of these overlaps, it will be a good thing because people see what they have to deliver. But we also have to be alive to how government works. Government's not just working with individual merit, going everywhere and doing everything. Before something becomes an agenda of government, there is a process. It does not actually start from cabinet. It starts from we in the other sectors, either the MDAs or actually a problem occurring in society, and it's carried up by the relevant MDAs. It goes to the relevant ministry. In that level, at ministerial level, the particular sector level, it is dealt with. It is analyzed, it is costed. It is when it passes that stage that it goes to cabinet, okay? And then cabinet again also goes through the whole process. It is costed, it's seen whether it can be implemented, and then it becomes part of the major government business that makes their way to parliament. So while we celebrate the individuals who are there because they're going to be part of a team, we should remember that the individuals are not working alone. They work within a team. And a government ministry does not just hinge on the minister. They are the constant permanent secretaries. The technocrats there are constant, and most of the time they are the ones who actually guide how ministers, the political heads, actually function, because we are lucky that we haven't had much turmoil and replacements of these. But in some countries, you can get a cabinet named per year, but doesn't affect the flow of business because they are those constants, the technocrats remain. So I am happy with the cabinet list because it shows a certain level of representation. Whether you're talking about representation based on age, representation based on gender, representation based on other things. Of course, we also hear there are complaints about some regions that feel they were underserved. They feel the central took and the west took the lion's share of the cabinet. Other areas are asking, but I haven't done the entire math. So we should, I wouldn't say we should relax. We should have faith that, first of all, the ministers who have been appointed are not coming to do a solo job. They are going to work with it. Actually, when you have a minister who wants to shine and operate alone without the technocracy, you have a problem. So let us, my prayer is that they work with the technical lines they are found, they offer leadership, but also get guidance from those who have been doing the journey. Yesterday there was, I think, a talk show barometer, and you know, there had been this whole hype that Minister of Local Government has been buried with the kind of people they have given them as a minister and as a deputy, that we're just going to be treated to a soap opera. But when Honorable Namere was on the show, she was clear about what she's going to do and what she will not tolerate. For example, misuse of PDM funds, misuse of those funds, those funds that go to the local government. She made it clear that we shall pursue them. But I also know she's aware on how government works. As she pursues them, she's going to work with the technical lines that help her pursue that. So let us have faith, let us have confidence, let's hold them accountable, those who are working in the different MDAs, those in civil society, and the cabinet will deliver. It's not a one-man show.
And just sticking to the example you gave there, we also see that the Honorable Christopher Yomunsi, who we normally would have here, going to health, and then having the Honorable Jane Ruth Acheng coming to ICT and national guidance, then also having General Tumukunde stepping into gender labor. When you look at this, Honorable Muiru says, you know, and you've also said there's a technical team there. How fast do they have to catch up to be able to execute their mandate?
I think they will catch up very fast because they will be inducted in the position. There's going to be a handover from an outgoing minister.
And an induction.
And an induction of the new minister. So we shouldn't worry. There's going to be work to be done. Yeah. So.
Let me come to Alan. What does this cabinet tell us as a country?
Tell us as a country?
Yes.
What is it supposed to say? I think, first of all, I really like my new minister. Just to be clear, we're going to get on like a house on fire, I'm sure. Honorable Ruth Acheng is going to be great for the media center, and we look forward to working with her. And then I also think there was a lot of inspired appointments. I think having Lawrence Muganga appointed into government, I don't care where the man has landed, but just to have him in government in itself is a great thing, because this man is progressive in his thinking. It's great to have someone who thinks about artificial intelligence coming and trying to help the government, hopefully, improve on its functionality. It's great to see Balam promoted, because I can't think of a much more hard-working minister in the last cabinet than Balam was. It's great to see now His Excellency Honorable Adonia Ayebare become Minister of Foreign Affairs, because he has been the de facto Minister of Foreign Affairs for a very long time. With his connections and his experience, he will do a great job. So to that extent, I think, and you know, honestly speaking, you know, I'm writing a book about the president. It's my own little thing. The book might never be published, but the one thing that I argue in that book is President Museveni has an ability to work with everything and anything. I asked him in 2013, when I was still at the BBC, why are you still president after 27 years? He said, right now, you can't give me anything that I've not seen, I've not, you know, experienced. I've seen it all before. And even in his appointment, when you look at the plethora of people that the president works with, sometimes if you put them in a room together, they are likely to fight. But he has a very unique ability to identify a strength in people. You'll ask, oh, what is Full Figure doing? The president knows. Oh, what is Butcherman? He knows. Oh, how is he able to bring all these characters around the table and work with all of them? It is that ability to see people and see their strengths. So, to that extent, I think it is a considered, carefully considered cabinet. And it will serve, and it shows that President Museveni is still in charge of this country. There is no two ways about it. But you can also see the emergence of certain people, the positioning of certain people, and you can also see the future of this country in this cabinet. So it is an entire spectrum, multifaceted, and it answers a lot of questions about where we are going, and where we've come from. Of course, you have Ephraim Kamuntu, who was a minister in 1979. You have where we are right now and where we are going. So that mix of multi-generations, cross-generation, is very well sort of thought out by the president, and it gives us a good indication of where he wants to take the country. And just to a follow-up question, the president, while the speaker and the deputy speaker had been elected, mentioned and said he will fire a minister if there's poverty in the background of their homestead. Is this a performance push? When you hear that message, what does it mean for this cabinet? I think it emphasizes the president's message about bringing people out of poverty. I think I am extremely aligned with that. I think You know, again, if I was, you know, if I was to subscribe to political thinking, it would be around the movement, where Paul Mwiru and Thomas Daye were representing two extreme parties can find room in the same, around the same table and push in the same direction.
They do find
and so for me, this idea of multi-party politics is not something that I would necessarily subscribe to. And the reason for that is it can be, the politicking can be a distraction. The core thing is to get people out of poverty. And that for me is important. And hopefully the president will follow through with that firing of people. If you have poverty in your background, you really have no business being a minister, because your job should be to talk to young people about the opportunities that abound, to tell young people how to help skill them, to create opportunities for them. That is your core job. That is your core mandate as a leader. I don't care what your position is, but as a leader, your core mandate must be to help people improve on themselves. You should be pushing for social mobility, for better economic positioning for your people.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor, you have something?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to add on to what he's saying, if you look at the demographics of this country, many a time when people have gotten educated, of course there was a time when there was all this coffee, cotton and everything, so the rich and elite also remained in those communities. Those, of course, who had high grades moved to the urban areas, but those who stayed behind were fairly wealthy. Now, over time, a demographic has come up where those who are successful must be in the urban areas for social mobility. So that has denied the rural areas of thinking like what you have here. If you go to the primary schools, you don't find us participating on the school boards, us participating on the secondary boards. Yes. So what the president is saying is, if you come from region X, and he has been by the way doing that in the past, when he goes to particular, he wants to know where XYZ has a house. And he goes there to see those houses. Because he knows you having a permanent address in a community forces you to participate in the affairs of that community. You connect with the people. And those are the people he finds actually relevant to talk to, because you have a following down there. But it to just be an elite club in Kampala, we are doing golf and I don't know, drinking from where, is not very helpful. And that should not actually just stop with ministers. I think it should go to some of his technocrats as well. Because we have moved away from the rural areas. We have left the rural to fight for themselves without the resources that we have had. That's why our politics is about digging graves and weddings and paying fees and all of those kinds of things. So if we could have a push where those who have made it a bit in life in the urban areas also have some presence where you're coming from. Be intentional about transforming. It could be you helping build a church, helping build a primary school. It doesn't have to be big, because just being with them and discussing what government is planning in a village hall will be more transformatory than you just being on these talk shows speaking, when actually where you're coming from there's no presence, the whole community is going. So it's a very good move, and should not just stop at ministers. It should go to some of his senior technical leads. Thank you.
Let me come back to Alan. Alan,
yeah, you come from Alan.
No, I'm coming back. Just the question I thought about, because Alan mentioned Professor Lawrence and also Professor Kamuntu, who are both in internal affairs. When you look at some of these dockets that some of them have been placed in, we have had Professor Lawrence here, where he has spoken about education, technology and all these things. Isn't that putting a square peg in a round hole and trying to force it to fit to deliver a government mandate?
No. Lawrence has never served in government. You don't want to give him a huge responsibility without initiating him. I think this is an opportunity for him to learn the ropes. You know, Balaam came in the previous role that he was in, yes. And he learned the ropes, and now he's been promoted to a much more demanding role and a much more senior role as a minister in charge of a very important docket. And I think this is an opportunity for Lawrence to learn how government works, to find his footing. Because let me tell you, I come from getting into government, I'm still learning how this place works. I'm still having to remind myself that I work for government these days. I'm still having, to work, like I was saying the other day, I've now discovered that I don't really like meetings. Because honestly, I have the time, they really aren't serving any purpose. But anyway, that said, as a minister, does it really limit him to the docket that is serving him? I'm sure he put, I don't know, Paul might be able to help us here, but he has an opportunity
in the cabinet.
In cabinet to discuss and to offer guidance or to offer thought leadership across the board. So I think just being able to sit at the table itself gives you a voice. Get into the room rather than screaming from outside, because however loud you are on the outside, if this guy is listening to music with his earphones, he won't pay attention to you.
Julia, what surprises did shock you about this cabinet? And why did they shock you?
I've not really had a lot of time to go through the whole list. Plus, I don't think I am familiar with most of the people that have been appointed. I think for me, my biggest shock, you see, the president has started this Chisanja, this term, with a lot of energy. No corruption, no sleep. There's just been a lot happening, from this to that. So it was quite interesting to see most of the former ministers actually making it back. It's not that I expected them to be dropped, but just actually them being reappointed, it just feels like, okay, I'm giving you a final chance to do what you're supposed to do. Because he even mentioned recently that he will sack ministers who, like when he finds out you're not doing your job, like you're not going to the grassroots to do what you're supposed to do, he will disappoint you. So I think with the energy, I like the fact that we've seen a couple of new faces on the cabinet, but also the reappointments, the reshuffles. For me, my biggest shock was Honorable Ruth in ICT and Honorable Chris in health. I think even on media you kept seeing debates of maybe the president may come and rectify, since those two were close to themselves. I mean, we're just used to Honorable Ruth managing the health ministry. I think she was doing a good job there. And now the public is really expectant. ICT has talked about the Vice Chancellor of VU, with all the conversations it's been having around education, AI. You'd clearly see that, okay, if you're bringing him to the table, okay, can we have somewhere close to either ICT, science, technology, innovation, or education? But I think Alan made it clear that the president maybe does his own analysis differently than what we would expect. And then I think for me, some of the perfect ministers, perfect people are appointed. Okay, perfect is really too much to say. But I would say the youth minister, like I mentioned earlier, we have seen her in the structures from Makerere University, Guild Politics, UNSA, National Youth Council. So she really already knows the politics at play and the different stakeholders she's going to be working with. Local government, I think Balam and Honorable Namere have a kind of energy that would push them back to the grassroots and their nature of hard work. With the Prime Minister, it was also a shock to see a Right Honorable Nabanja back. I mean, she's very tremendous with how much work she puts in. She likes her job. She's pro-grassroots. She follows up. But I think Professor made it clear. I think for us in Kampala, the expectations we have, for us who have gone to school, we want our ministers to be in a certain way. Yet, in actual sense, the biggest percentage of Ugandans are still out of the money economy, are still struggling to even access the basic government programs. And my limited experience in the politics, I realized that there is so much that the government is doing that the intended beneficiaries are not taking advantage of, either because they don't know or even those that know there is a lot of misappropriation. So for me, I think I resolved that it's better for us to actually have political heads that can do the follow through, that can go back and like put in all the necessary effort to make sure at least the money allocated, like maybe through PDM, the intended beneficiaries make a very, very good use of it. So for me, moving forward, my expectations of these reshuffles, the reappointments, I want it to be really a reflection of the commitment, the reaffirmation of the commitment of the president. He has said no corruption, no sleep, the priorities are clear, ATMS, so we are just waiting to see how all these outcomes go back to the grassroots person. But like Prof said, it takes a team, so we are also watching to see how most of these people actually adapt to their roles faster. And like the president keeping his word, also those that are really not adapting. I think as a country, we should not tolerate leaders who take on positions and they do not do their role, or even lack the basic effort of trying to learn on job. But moving forward, there are political heads. So with government, they're usually the popular policies, the quick wins, and the ones that are sustainable, they take a very long time to actually be adapted on. So we're also looking at how all of this will be balanced. But at the end of the day, we are just hoping that the cabinet really puts in effort to serve the interests of a people-centered cabinet as well, to bring their leadership closer to the people, those at grassroots and those that make of the elite, so that at the end of the day we are aware of what they are doing, how we can benefit from government, the new changes, how to adapt, and also to be in position to hold them to account.
Honorable Mwiru, when you looked at this cabinet, especially some of the changes that are there, some of the mandate that has been given to the different areas, as a member of parliament, the 12th parliament, what surprises did you see? What shocked you? And comment on some of the dockets that are supposed to deliver the ATMs. Agriculture, tourism, minerals, ICT.
Well, to me,
manufacturing and services.
Yes.
To me, all those are paths. If you talk to, for instance, when he talked about this is a zero tolerance to corruption, he didn't mean it. Of course, he initiated MPs in corruption in Xiangwan. So there was nothing new I was expecting on that front. But also to...
What do you mean by that?
When they gave 100 million to MPs.
But
they said it was opposition
were collected, some of them.
No. He gave, when he was giving it to... That he was initiating them to corruption.
So the 20 million was not collected by opposition MPs as well?
Where?
You didn't get yours?
No.
It was going out to the secretary.
But is it corruption though? It is
what?
Facilitation money.
Facilitating what?
People are broke. And people are not as rich as you. After elections, people are not as rich as you are.
Then they should give every Ugandan 20 million.
Oh, every MP.
Actually, just like these ministers, the president talk of the 4-acre model. And these people is appointing in the cabinet. Do they have the 4 acres model in their areas? Because we see we are starting, charity begins at home. Do they have? Because when those who have not gone through it have started looking for him for another appointment. I don't want to say the journalistic waffle. We normally people say, talk about all this type of thing. Because at the end of the day, we don't see these policies which we talk about. For example, the president has been laboring on the 4-acre model. And these days it demonstrates on screen. At the State of National Address, at the budget, wherever, even us, we are dealing with electing a speaker. But when he got a minute, he had to take us in that direction. But the question then is, how many people in his cabinet have the 4-acre model? Oh, let's say 8 or 10 to start with. Why am I raising that? I was talking to a colleague who did not make it to cabinet. Of course, and he was saying that he wants to see whether the president will give him something else to do.
But he's an MP.
Of course, yes. So I asked him that, now you man, you have been around. You have been moving around. The president talks about this thing. For you, don't bother. You don't do anything. All your expertise is just being around and don't implement anything. What is taking place? So, but when it comes to appointment, it depends on why someone has appointed. Because all these things we talk, it may say not to give them money. They are, you have been seeing in the ministries. I think you learn. Since you are learning government, there's why they do a zero release in a quarter. People just get salaries, and there's nothing you'll be judging someone that as a minister is performing as the minister not performing. It's going to be on what is the release, how much money have they released for performance of the sector, because we are judging someone on the basis, because if I'm a minister and I'm superintending over a ministry, let's say education, I made a budget, I had the work plans, which I gave you, and you don't give me the money. They cannot start judging me that am I a performer or not a performer. It's not just a performer, it's not just about being, just staying there. There are ministers who have complained that their entities, they are supposed to go to the field and supervise what government is doing. And the budget line of zero. You understand? And even these ministers, these young ones, they cannot manage some of those PSs. Because the PS makes a budget and expects to get 100% for a quarter. Then he receives 40% in a quarter. So he first says what he receives, first called the salaries of the council judges. Then the man almost now the minister wants to go out. At top management, this is when you see them fighting. That's why the entities wherever you divide them public accounts committee, they're just fighting amongst themselves. So at the end of the day, all these appointments, if we mean performance, it must come with goodwill of releases of resources. That's why, like I've been, like when it comes to the Minister of Finance, they don't widen the tax base. Every now and then they're just piling taxes on the same things within the CBD. And this has been our argument. What is your plan to widen the tax base? Like when my brother just said that, you know, he wants to come up with a proposal to give the non-tax revenue in his sector. If you came to Parliament and happen to be a member of your committee, a member of the committee where you are appearing, once I hear you say that you are in this government, you have a plan to non-tax revenue, it becomes our responsibility to ensure that you get money to go and increase money in the government. That level of free thinking, it doesn't actually happen. By the way, on the other hand, the Prime Minister, you know, the office of the Prime Minister has 13 ministries and of OPM. But the Prime Minister is supposed to coordinate all government agencies and departments to ensure that actually there's cohesion, the way they operate. If you also, and now when they release money, you realize that they have released it to others and she does not have the money, she's the chief coordinator. That's why time when there was that scandal of OPM, Mama came and said that no. For me, I'm a Prime Minister. I'm not a minister. I was not to make that argument. That I'm not responsible for. But we're telling him no, for at least for the 13 ministers under your office of the Prime Minister. You're supposed to convene, you're supposed to be part of the top management. And I was saying, you know, for me I control the entire government. Don't actually ask him. So to cut the whole story short, it is going to be that the budget has passed. There must be releases. Because if they want to frustrate now, for instance, Alania, if they have issues with you, they don't give you any money, they'll only be giving you your salary. And but they'll be giving only salary, but they'll be receiving money in different departments, doing the same work you're actually supposed to do. So that duplicity is a wastage. The question is, how do we synergize? How do we bring out, if it's about communicating government output, what they do? Why should everybody be speaking? That's why when you invite them for talk shows, they normally don't turn up.
Okay. Let me read some feedback so that I can give you parting shots. This is Silva. He says, asking yourself, does Parliament benefit the public trust? Would it affect their work? This is Parliament. It sets the work for itself and in favor of the executive, okay? This is Faith. She says the Parliament must not be amended. Parliament must not be amended and approve laws based on partisan interests. This is one of the acts that is delaying Uganda's transformation. Okay. Topista says Dr. Muganga should have been appointed as ICT or education. Putting him in internal affairs, what are they really doing?
There's ICT there. A lot
this
of
is
ICT.
Semaganda. He says, don't you think this is the right time for the 12th Parliament to build parliamentary credibility, as it can start by correcting the corruption scandals and procedures and inappropriate bills that are enacted? Okay. This is Barnabas. He says, can we live without authority and power to do their mandate? The ministers are a showpiece on a position. It's like a father giving his children candy just to make them happy, but without really influencing their behavior. Okay. Finally, this is Jacob. He says, each time Honorable Paul Muiru speaks, I want to listen and listen. He's knowledgeable on how government should be functioning, and I want to understand why he's not with government. Okay, thank you for the comments there. I'm going to give parting shots starting with Julia.
Would you have rejected a ministerial appointment?
The Honorable Paul Muiru, Professor Sarah, and lastly, Alan. Your parting shot.
One, I want to start by saying whoever has had a chance to be in service for this term, it's not permanent. Use your term in office to really serve the Ugandans and move the agenda of priorities. Like we've deliberated all through, we're interested in the outcomes. But most importantly, I want to say that we've talked about Parliament, we've talked about the executive, but I usually say it takes a community. Like there's very many parties involved. We've had MDAs, you've had the judiciary, we've had very many, even as citizens. Yeah, there is a role we have to play in making sure that at the end of the day, our country moves forward in the way we want to see it. But most likely, from the angle of Ugandans, like I said the other time, Ugandans just want a decent life, yeah? As we are pushing for the ATMS, perfect, well and good, but at the end of the day, it has to translate into Ugandans being in position to move into the money economy, get something to eat, take their children to school, which is very important because the future of the economy depends largely on the education and also the skills that the population will have, and also access to health care. So I really hope that as we are judging, as we are doing a lot through public pressure to hold the different leaders to account, even us in our different institutions, we are playing a role in making sure that our government moves forward. Thank you so much for having me.
Honorable Muiru.
Well, to my friend who asked me, I'm in government, I was sworn in as an MP. That maybe I just wanted to remind him that. But I just wanted to say the 12th Parliament will not inherit the badge of dishonor. So we are going to start on a new page, and it will only be fair and equitable that we are judged on what we have done as the 12th Parliament. I thank you.
Thank you. Professor Sarah.
Thank you, Timothy. Maybe just 2 or 3 things. One, we have been discussing the cost of Parliament, of such a big Parliament and Cabinet. I just want us to ask ourselves, have we also counted the cost of not having such a big Parliament and such a big Cabinet? You know, we look at cost financially, but also there is a cost politically. So maybe we need to go back to where these decisions are being made and ask them, we have wanted a smaller August House, but what's the cost of not having it as big as that? Because I think that's the balancing act. The other thing we have sat here and debated is the Parliament losing trust, and hence the issue of the honor or dishonor that's being inherited. But looking at all the MPs that came and looking at them swearing in and looking at their constituencies celebrating them coming in, I don't think people find that they are dishonorable. People really feel they are honorable and they are going to represent their people, and I believe and have faith that they are going to do a good job. So our trust should not be imposed on, but we want to see more service delivery on that. And in all these things, as we are saying these things, let us remember the society we live in and the context, the time and history at which these things are occurring. I know at a certain time too we shall progress to maybe the ideal land we want to be. But meanwhile, we have to work with the dynamics we have. And that's why it's very important for all of us to go back and try to make some transformation where we come from. Just coming from there and being in Kampala, taking wine and playing golf is not sufficient. Thank you very much.
Lastly, Alan.
I just think that everybody who has any sort of responsibility as a public servant is going to be scrutinized more than ever. We saw that happen in the last parliament, and now I think we are all watching to see how they conduct themselves in office and whether they are really serving the nation or serving their individual interests. Although you can say that by serving Uganda, you're serving your personal interest as well. So the scrutiny is going to be huge.
Yes.
And the public is watching, and you will be aired if you don't do your job. But also, it's really important. I saw Honorable Muiru here with that sanitizer. And I think we all need to have one of those sanitizers. It's very, very important at a time when Ebola is on a rampage in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, that we are careful as Ugandans. We need to sanitize and to make sure that Ebola doesn't spread, wave at people, follow the guidelines of the Ministry of Health, and make sure that if there's any death that occurs along the border, especially the border communities of Western Uganda, all the way from Arua to Kisoro, make sure that you report that death so that the medical officials can come and take a sample and test it and guide on how that body should be buried. Well, let's be very careful with Ebola at the moment, and I thought I'd take advantage of this opportunity on national TV to make sure that we pass this message across.
Thank you. And just to emphasize, new guidelines have come out, and we need to be able to pay attention to them. Just go to the website of the Ministry of Health, you'll be able to get them. But gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for coming. The production team that has made today possible, especially you who has watched us up to this hour and sent in a message, thank you very much. We'll end with this quote. Each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. Good morning.
So, Muchara.
Yes, Daddy.
You know the children are going back to school and things are a bit tight. For now, why don't you take half of the fees to junior school, and for the school van contribution, we shall pay later.
Daddy, why don't we pay using MTN Momo, where we stand a chance of winning school fees for a whole year and more? By the way, you can also apply for a school fees loan, and also participating schools can win a school van.
That's right! Win school fees for a whole year and more. Get Momo goodies and a school van for participating schools. You can also apply for a school fees loan. Simply dial *165*80# or use the Momo app.
Guidance on the physical attendance of the State of the Nation Address on the 4th of June 2026. Following a statement from the Ministry of Health on the outbreak of Ebola and guidance on the standard operating procedures to be followed, Parliament of Uganda has adopted the following precautionary measures regarding physical attendance of the sitting at